All right, guys, we got a special guest here today, Reese Johnson. Reese, how you doing?
Not too bad.
Good. Ryan's joined us as well.
That's right.
Reese, tell us a little bit kind of what you do, your day-to-day, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I'm a full-time real estate broker, and so that keeps me busy. I'm licensed in Tennessee, Kentucky, and just added Illinois. And so selling hunting farms is what I like to do when I get to do it. And I do plenty of houses and commercial as well. So that just keeps me on the road and on this phone.
Good deal.
I'm sure of it.
Do you do any land consulting or anything?
Not on a, professional level, just from experience, and it's something I've kind of toyed with, but not really gotten into, as far as formal. I'm busy enough, we've got 3 kids and all that keeps me going and trying to find time for myself to get in the woods and might be something we look into down the road, something that what kind of got me into all this, is my dad. He went to Mississippi State and got his master's down there from the Deer Lab. And so that and his job, is kind of what got us where we are today. Mm-hmm. And then taking that and ran, which he's just retired this past spring. So that's hopefully maybe going to open some opportunities for him to help me maybe, or open some new doors, try some different things. So that's definitely a thought.
And he was over at Clarks River Refuge, wasn't he?
Yep. So we've done the National Wildlife Refuge System, been in Georgia, Mississippi, Arkansas, Kentucky's where we finally ended up. And that was back 2004, I think. The plan was not to stay here, but we liked it too much. And so it's just where we're at now. He retired out of here. And of course, now I'm married with 3 kids. My sister, she's married 3 kids. And this is home now.
What's the market like right now as far as like recreational land? Is it like a buyer's market or seller's market right now? What is it?
Well, the market has definitely softened up a little bit. It's not like it was in 21 and 22 even. And so, with rates being a little higher, everything just being so much more expensive, inflation and such that, there are, I'm not going to say bargains. I mean, there's always bargain, but, it's definitely not what it was back when. And the thing about land in general is, most of the time, the buyers don't have to buy and the sellers don't have to sell. Mm-hmm. And so you get a lot of folks who are, well, if I can't get what I could have got back then I'm not interested in selling. And it's like, so finding that perfect combination situation where the dollars make sense for everybody and the investment makes sense, that's become a bigger challenge as time has gone on and we've gotten into this market. But, from when we were in high school and all that, I mean, prices have come up significantly.
Yeah,
of course.
We had Bill Winke on a couple weeks ago, and we talked about how he flipped the recreational land in the early 2000s. And at that time, I think he told us it was like $325 an acre in southern Iowa.
Oh yeah.
And but curious from a real estate perspective, do you think is there properties out there you can find that you can still do a timber harvest on and still make decent money and flip land that way?
You're not going to pay for it. I get a lot of folks who think that, and land finances differently as well. And so not only do you have the good old days of back when you could have, done those things and really done well, the internet, I think, and then just the knowledge, between the podcasts, the YouTube videos, all the information that's available, it's a readily accessible. So the folks who were in that game did well when they knew what maybe not everybody else knew. Yeah. And so now that information's out there, he's like, it can help you make a few payments. So you might cover your taxes, but you're not generally going to pay for an entire property anymore with timber and tillable.
Yeah. The sellers are just so much more educated and
right. And then real estate agents too, which I mean, there's a lot of them. That doesn't mean they're all very good, but so that's where, as a seller or a buyer, it's your right and you better be informed on who you're hiring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you hunt mainly public land?
I hunt anything and everything I can get my hands on. So I've got permission pieces. I've got farms that I pay to lease. And then I've got plenty of cameras and hunts planned on public as well.
How many cameras are you running?
I'm a little down this year. Probably 80 to 100 in that window.
Yeah.
I bought a whole bunch. My stockpile's getting a little less and I need to replenish it. But
yeah, they don't last super long.
No, it doesn't matter what it is. And between them getting messed with and something I learned, we went out to Kansas not like 2 weekends ago. Got a farm out there we're going to be hunting this year. My dad and I both drew tags. And so we picked up a lease out there from some folks, friends of a friend kind of deal. And went and set up feeders and put out cameras. And I'd already been out there once to just learn it, meet the landowner, see if it was something we wanted to do. So we went out there and set it up, for him and for me. And something that I did learn is that I like to run my cell cams off of 12-volt batteries, a little power cord that goes to them. And I think it's the pack rats. They really like to chew on those cords. Because I was in July and I had 4 cameras on battery boxes and 3 of them were dead within a week. I was like, what in the world's going on? That don't make any sense.
Yeah.
I get out there and every single one of them had been chewed.
That's wild.
So something we don't deal with here.
Yeah.
Never would have thought it.
What, I got drawn for my out-of-state Kansas tag this year too. And my deer have big deer disappeared in the last month. Is that happened for y'all too? We're in Northeast Kansas, so it's probably
we're different. We're Southeast. We're probably not too far, but, I don't have a ton of intel.
Mm-hmm.
That farm is what really killed us, particularly out there this year, is that they had wheat in and they didn't get it cut till late because it was so wet, and it was so late that they didn't double crop beans. So I don't have any food, so I don't have any deer.
Yeah.
So they're showing up. I'm getting new bucks mostly every night right now, and so I'm every night waking up at 3 a.m.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think our problem was it's been so warm. I mean, our farm is still surrounded by standing corn that they haven't harvested. So that's where those big deer are still bedded in my opinion.
Yeah. And there's a lot where we are. Since it was mostly wheat, there's no corn really within a 2 or 3 mile radius. It's mostly all beans, but that's where the deer are. Now there's a couple, we found a couple of acorn trees dropping that they're tearing it up. And so I haven't, we've got some pretty good deer, but nothing that I'm, prepared to get in the truck and drive for tomorrow anyway.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on regulations for trail cameras? Obviously, that's been a big topic over the last little while. That I know it was thrown out there for Kentucky and a few other states.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I want to run my cameras, and really, there's the 2 main points that I would give is one, and this is something my dad dealt with as the manager of a refuge. His argument was that, and it has changed a little bit now that we have cell cams. But back in those days when it was a topic, it was more of a, if you're not smart about how you access and you're checking those cameras regularly, you're leaving that scent and you're giving the deer as much of an advantage versus going in random.
Yep.
So that's one thing that, I would say, it definitely put some pressure. And don't get me wrong, I'm out there on public and it's like I find a scrape, my initial reaction, start looking around. It's like, where's it at?
Yep.
Because I'm fixing to get my picture to it. But, it's one of those things where, bird watchers and hikers and, it can be a hobby for some. I know some guys that like running cameras more than they do hunting, and I might fall into that category. Yeah. But to me, it's one of those things where I, especially being Kentucky in a $1 state, I want to build that history. I want to know that I've had that deer at 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a deer on public land. I made a post about it not too long ago. I've had since 2019.
Yeah.
So, he survived from 2019, and it's same vicinity. I'm pretty confident it's him. That deer's 9, 10 years old.
Yeah.
And still making it.
Well, that's my thing. I feel like, I love to deer hunt regardless, but cameras have kind of helped me get to that next level of being invested into it. Got a wife, got a kid, got job, all that kind of stuff. It's a way for me to kind of connect to the woods that I'm hunting when I'm not able to get out there. Obviously, there's nothing better than sitting in a stand, but to be able to have that connection when you're not able to get out to the woods, I think it's just unmatched.
Well, and I think another thing is it gives hunters hope. It's like, hey, I know that I had a picture of a 150, 160. He may not be regular. He may live on the neighbor. He may come through one, but it's like, I may not be as quick to settle for that 3-year-old.
Yeah.
It gives you a chance to build the history, a chance to hold out and feel good about hey, I'm waiting on a particular deer. I know that he's here. I don't have to shoot that deer. And then that helps us, helps everyone when the quality gets better and the age structure is better. And that's the big battle today is, we want age because age equals antlers. It doesn't matter where you're at. And so finding the balance of regulations and what everybody wants and still having a good product out there, because in the end, it doesn't matter. Big deer or what sell licenses, big deer, what get people out there. And, if the motto becomes, if we become a $2 state, that's gone generally. Yeah. And then they will not have the participation, the revenue, the folks who, Kentucky will not be one of those states. So that is a big fear for me.
Yeah.
Did we used to get $1 tag public and 1 private?
LBO was a bonus buck,
Yep.
and then Peabody, I think, was a bonus buck.
Yeah. And they took that away, and that's really, increased the quality on both of those. I would argue.
Oh yeah. I'm really, I'm probably going to make some people mad when I say this. I wish they would push gun season back to December.
Oh yeah.
Instead of in my opinion, I think we would have just as big as deer in Kansas, maybe not Iowa, but it would be pretty close.
Any Midwestern state that's willing to do it. And obviously there's a lot of political challenges to it. And that's really the big thing is, you're fighting against the insurance money as much as anything. And then the disease side of it. But yeah, any state in the Midwest that's willing to follow Iowa's example, and Iowa could even be better, but it doesn't matter if moving your gun season out of the rut, going from rifle to muzzleloader and shotgun, becoming a draw state for non-residents, any of those things would make a massive difference. And so what has kept Kentucky as good as it is just simply the fact that it's a $1 state.
Yeah.
If you look at Illinois or Indiana, they're better, they're bigger. And not everybody does shoot $2, but you can get them.
Mm-hmm.
The hard part about that, I feel like, is we have such a high population of deer. We've got so many does, and honestly, we've got too many does in this area. And so we need to, it's kind of like a happy medium, because I know from Fish and Wildlife, of course, they want more does killed. They added that September antlerless only season this year for rifle. And, they're kind of fighting that battle as well. How do we get more people to take more deer to balance our herd? Because in my opinion, we've gotten out of balance herd. We've got way too many does per buck, and, that's difficult to navigate.
Yeah. And, you look back, 20, 30 years ago, the thing was, you didn't shoot does.
Yeah.
And that was, there was a time for that, but yeah, you're exactly right. And so, and it is hard because it's like, we're going to Kansas and we've leased a farm.
Yeah.
I'm not going out there to shoot does.
Yep.
And that farm, I don't have time. I get to run out there and hunt it for a week or two. And, deer, does need harvested there as well as they do here.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're finding that balance, is the hard part, because, reducing the deer numbers would make the state happy. It would make the insurance companies happy, but, harvesting or shooting does is not popular.
Yeah.
So that is the hardest part is convincing people and getting them out there in some form or fashion. If it's me, the antlerless seasons are fine. I'd much rather have that in December.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be out there in 90 degrees.
Getting ticks and fighting snakes.
So
and
that would be more my thing, but that's, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause Iowa landowner tag, is it $2 or $3?
But if you have a landowner tag, then you can have up to 3 as a landowner in Iowa. So, that's an argument. It's like, why does an Iowa resident need 3? That's their decision, but they're taking care of their residents, So if anybody should get that, I commend them for that.
Mm-hmm.
But, we're down here where that's not, we don't have that. And so, but now you're looking at, for an archery tag, 6 years, 6 points, and that point creep's just going to keep going.
Yeah.
So I've personally, I'm not waiting 10 years to hunt Iowa. I'll just go with a gun, muzzleloader or a gun, and, just is what it is. I'll hunt public or whatever I can do. But I'm not, I want to hunt it as many times in my lifetime as I can.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this was the first year I put in for my Kansas one. And from the people I've talked to, it's like an every other year thing in Kansas for archery.
It depends on the unit. It should be. I went out there in 21 and 23, and I went a little further west, and I hunted public both times and shot deer both times. One was a 5-year-old and one was a 3-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And they were both mid-30s deer that you're hunting public, you're sleeping in your truck, you're driving hundreds of miles from piece to piece to piece to figure out which, and I love it. Don't get me wrong. That's my favorite hunt. So I told my dad, I was like, for me to give that up, because this was our year to draw, it's like for me to give that up, that was hard.
Yeah.
But we did it. And so we're going to see what happens. But generally it's every other year, but there, some on the eastern half, I think the percentages are a little higher to be able to draw every year.
Mm-hmm. From a real estate agent perspective, if they were to move gun season back to December, the market would fly. And because this is one of the few states where you can kill a big deer in velvet in September.
Yeah. And I think that would, if you eliminated that, I'd be perfectly fine if deer season started October 1st. I'm just not a huge get out the early fan, but that is a draw. And so, that balance is hard. But if you did something to make the age structure better, then Kentucky, Game and Fish, I forget the percentage, 84, 86% of their budget comes from license sales.
Yeah.
So my fear is that, as quality continues to decline, if that is the case, and we continue to, sell more licenses and bring more people in because they need to continue to increase the revenue, at some point that's going to tilt over. And then, the return on that's not going to be the same. And so, and then by then it's going to be a long cycle of, we're not getting people to come here because we're not a destination state anymore.
Yeah.
And so there will be a day when that starts to decline. And then you still got the balance of trying to get more deer killed. And that's their thing is, extend the season, add more opportunity, lengthen the gun season, to meet that number. But at some point there's going to be a tipping point.
Mm-hmm. What have you seen in LBL the last few years? Is there more out of state guys hunting LBL?
The public craze has taken over.
You could thank the hunting public guys on YouTube for that one.
Yeah. And it is, and it's one of those things where it's everywhere. But yeah, I mean, the pressure has gotten significantly in all states, and I'm doing the same. I've got cameras in Illinois and Kansas and Missouri and here and just wherever I can go to try to have an opportunity. And I may make it this year and I may not. But a lot of that, I go up there and I'll leave them soak. I'll go up there and shed hunt, and I'm just on the off chance I do kill a deer in Kentucky early for once, I might have a window where I can sneak off to an over the counter state.
Mm-hmm. If someone, let's say, someone's going to take a vacation and hunt the rut, whether it's in Kansas, and it's probably different for Kansas. Let's just say Kansas as an example. What is your favorite days in November to hunt the rut?
So yeah, Kansas is a little different for me in the sense that I want to be out there when it's cold. I mean, I remember that one night, it was 9 degrees. I was sleeping in the truck. It was not fun. But, I want to be out there. And Kansas, to me, was a little different. I was far enough west in that situation that I was hoping to find them in lockdown so I could maybe do a spot and stalk. Mm-hmm. The train really didn't. There was I had one good opportunity I found on a bedded buck. And I'm like, I see him. I figure out the wind. I'm driving this section, pop over the hill. I'm parking here. And I can get over the top of the hill there. And there's 2 guys standing, one with a bow and one with a camera. It's like, okay, well, I'll just move on to the next one.
Yeah.
So the opportunity, but out there for that reason, being in lockdown, especially on public, I've gone out there a little bit later. Basically I'll be here and I'll hunt our opener, and then I'll leave Tuesday, and then I'll be gone Tuesday through Sunday. Mm-hmm. So that being the case, I would rather be out there when it's cold. And then, here for most places in the true, I hate to say Midwest, but this side of things, that it is hard to beat that first week of November if you've got the weather. Yeah. But nowadays I remember there was 3 years in a row we had the gun opener. It was snow.
Yeah.
And then it was last year, the year before, it was in the 80s.
Yeah.
So it's just so hard, which works for my schedule. I can kind of tweak it out a little bit to where I need to.
I feel like I've had more success seeing daylight activity from mature bucks on Halloween weekend here the last few years rather than actually November.
Yeah. And that's one of those things. If you can find that scrape, you get in there, scrape week, as it's become known. That is a fine time to get in there. And if you can figure out where he's bedding, what scrape he's wanting to work, right before dark and get in there. That 25th through the 31st is a prime time to do that. And this year's looking like we may have some decent weather. So we'll see. But it's been a little weird. I don't know if there's enough acreage on the ground or what's going on. I feel like they're a little behind on scrapes, or maybe I'm just anxious, but they're starting to finally show up. I mean, I had a couple new deer show up last night working scrapes I've had cameras on since July, and then nothing's touched them. And then here they come.
Yeah. That's kind of same. What I've seen is, I mean, it's really overall been pretty slow, to where you normally like start getting into the beginning part of October and start seeing some deer starting to show up, and, you can tell they're starting to do different stuff. And it just seems like that first 2 weeks so far of October has been a little bit behind, and now I'm starting to see some deer moving, deer on their feet.
We took the kids out this weekend for youth season, and we struggled.
Yeah.
I mean, my boy, he shot his first deer Saturday morning, so that was the highlight. But, getting a buck for either one of them, and granted, they're not picky, but just getting one on their feet in daylight. And I have got blinds and cameras and corn, and I have been trying to just find a consistent anything and it's been a struggle. This year's been hard for whatever reason, even with the corn.
Yeah.
Which I'm not afraid to admit.
I've been blaming it kind of on the acorns. It seems like every big oak tree you see has got a bunch of acorns on it dropping. And that's the only thing that I can guess. And where I hunt, we've got a bunch of cows out there too. And, they have been in the woods more than they typically are this time of year. And the only thing I can attribute that to is more acorns too.
Yeah. And two different spots that we hunted with the kids that I hunted with, one my daughter and one my son. We had feeders, corn, and we saw a deer, and they were just walking by to go eat, because it was funny because we'd hear the acorns, they were raining, just raining, and then every time one would drop, Jeremiah'd be like, "Oh, there's a deer coming." No, that's acorns. But they went out there, they fed, we saw them, but they didn't have any interest in that.
Yeah,
in that corn.
Well, you mentioned the corn pile, which they lifted that baiting ban 2 years ago.
This year is the first year, but it's got to be can't be a gravity feeder or anything like that. It's got to be spread.
Okay.
Broadcast.
So what? And I need to be more educated on this topic, which is why I'm asking you. And you walk a lot of properties with real estate and stuff. So which one is more detrimental, EHD or CWD?
Oh, you're going to get me in trouble here. Visually, it's EHD. That can wipe out a herd in a hurry. And there's really nothing we can do about it. What I hate, and maybe it's happening and I'm not aware of, is just the lack of funding and the lack of research and the interest in figuring out anything as compared to CWD.
Yeah.
And so they're putting a lot of dollars and a lot of effort into that, and you don't hear anything. And I'm sure somebody out there somewhere, but to what degree? Is it 10-1?
Yeah.
I have my own problems with CWD as well, but that's an opinion.
Yeah. Cause EHD has been a problem in Iowa and the Midwest for many years. And have they made any progress on anything?
There's a lot. I think mostly it's out of our control. And this year was a prime EHD year. I found one of my assumingly would have been target bucks for somebody, 4-year-old. The deer, I had pictures of it 2, 3, 4. I was over there bush hog and I could smell him. And so I didn't even bother with it that day because I didn't want to get covered in ticks and then get back on the tractor. So I came back a different day, and it took me a little while, but he was in the creek, probably 135, 140 inch 10 that, a deer that I knew well and I'd had pictures of up until that point. And so we got hit with it pretty hard, I think, here and a lot of places. And it's hard to say really just how bad. We really probably won't know until shed season, until we start walking. I mean, my number one target buck last year, he was on public, and he was traditionally a deer that would shift and show up that first cold front in October. And so I had some opportunities at some other deer that I, looking back, should have, tried to hunt, and I didn't because I was waiting. And he never showed up, and he was like clockwork. He'd done it for 3 years in a row. This was year 4. And so finally I got a little anxious in late January and went for a walk, and it didn't take me half a mile.
Yeah.
First thing I found.
Yeah.
And you could tell a lot of people, whether it's EHD or whatever you say, I mean, those deer that die early, they have those real sharp burrs on there, and they don't have that same coloration, or maybe they're a little frail. And so it's to me, that would have most likely been EHD.
Yeah.
When you say a prime EHD year, is it just because it's been so dry?
Yeah. So dry, and then what that does is limits the water holes. And then those midges, they get in the mud, and those are the ones that bite the deer. That's the way I understand it. And so, when we have a drought and there's either a late frost, frost is what will kind of end it. And so if we have a dry year where they're concentrated and there's a lot of exposed mud, that is, the kind of years that heighten it. And this was, a prime year for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been as dry as I can ever remember it in a long time.
Yeah. It just seemed like to me the no baiting ban on certain counties when they were trying to do CWD just didn't really make sense to me, because, you could have one property in one county that you can bait, and then 100 yards over here, the property line, he can't, but it's the same deer using the same property. So it just didn't really make sense to me.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, I'll touch on that a little bit and try not to make too many people mad. I'm not a big fan of the way that they have treated it so far. I think I will, commend Kentucky for allowing baiting back. And the reason I say that is that Kentucky, especially where we are, it's been, we don't have sections. We don't have big chunks. It's been chopped up and chopped up and chopped up to the point to where my fear was that on folks who may have 10 acres where they live, and they might go out and shoot, have a corn pile and shoot whatever comes in. And that's just how they hunt. And that's okay. But when you lose those people because they can't bait, or maybe that's just all they know, you're not going to see the harvest that you want. And the point with them, with CWD and all these additional things, is to harvest more deer. And so my fear was that they were going to say, well, you guys didn't do your job. You didn't shoot enough deer, so we're going to bring in the sharpshooters. We're going to do also the things that some other states have done, and we're going to reduce the population. And so, for them to allow baiting, I don't know of any other states that have done that so far. But hopefully we will see an increase in harvest that'll make everybody happy and get some folks back in the woods on those small pieces that didn't. So I can live with that. I don't know. There was a podcast on Meat Eater with the Chamberlain, I believe, on CWD not too long ago. And, the way that they presented that, there was definitely some things that I didn't know. And it was a lot of good information. And I think it's been out 2 or 3 weeks now. But, there's still things that my biggest fear is the knee-jerk reaction by a state agency to say, hey, it's here, it's detected for the first time, we got to wipe them out. Yeah. And is that the best solution? And if it's been around for that long, obviously populations where it's significant, they're showing declines, but at some point, will Mother Nature, will they, have some immunity to it? Will that become on, will that show up? What is the absolute worst case scenario? Do we lose them entirely? Obviously whitetails are extremely adaptable and they can figure it out. And so that's my big fear, was that doing something so quickly, so dramatically that might affect, the income for that state, the draw to that state, whichever one it was. And so it will be interesting to see, but I will say I'm not a fan of everything, but I do appreciate the so far the way that they have treated Kentucky wise, to get us to this point, and then we're just going to have to see from here.
A friend of mine's a biologist for Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, and I've spoke to him about it some. And from his stance, the biggest thing that they're worried about in the state of Kentucky is the elk population. Yeah, because they've spent so much time, so much money over the course of several years to build that population up. And I'll be honest, like, this is just my opinion. I don't think we really know all that much about it. Even the biologists, I don't think it's all kind of new, what they're learning, as they go. And so I think they may just be scared and precautious. Obviously there's a lot of money invested into it as well. So there's probably some other factors there.
Yeah. And you have to be. So, I don't discredit that at all. You've got to do that. That 5-year study they finished, that they were talking about Northwest Arkansas was really interesting. They're saying now it's so prevalent that the deer per square mile is 1 to 5. Yeah. And they're expecting that, over 50% of the bucks harvested will have it, and so it's just one of those things of it's probably not ground zero, but that's one of the, further advanced populations to where what happens there could happen here in 20 years, 50 years, or it may, we may never see it. Yeah. And so it's interesting to keep eyes on. And so, my thing is let's not, right now, the with the knowledge and the information and the things that are out there, this is the best, whitetail hunting has ever been. Yeah. And I don't want to run in there and just ruin it quickly over a fear. Yeah. And not knowing. And that's the thing I don't think about, that I'm afraid, that's not being taken into account is, big deer equal big dollars. Yeah. And if you go in there and you wipe that out of just being precautious, where is that balance? And then and that's really kind of what I would, feel better about, having some answers on it and approaching it in, that way.
The one thing I wish that, and we as hunters could all be a little bit better about this as well, but with Fish and Wildlife, everything is educating even just the public on what CWD is, what EHD is, because here recently, I know I've seen, and it's been a pet peeve of mine, so many people that don't know the difference between EHD, CWD. And I don't know if you saw on the news the other day, there was a deer that went into a school, and everyone jumped to the conclusion, oh, that must be CWD. Well, I'm not a biologist. I don't know the most about it. However, the deer that I saw didn't appear to have CWD. Generally, they'll be malnourished, all that. And we're in a drought year, probably EHD if I had to guess. And I've seen several people post pictures of dead deer next to water. Oh, this CWD is terrible. Well, we don't know that it's CWD. No one talks about EHD enough, I don't think, compared to CWD.
Yeah. And that's just because of the funding and the things that you have to do when you shoot a deer in a CWD area, and, bringing it back across state lines, if I shoot a deer out of state, well, generally, if I'm not getting it skull capped and I want to have it Euroed, or something to that, I'm going to have to hang around and wait a day or two. before I can bring it home.
Yeah.
And there was, that happens in Kansas where that one day where I dropped it off and I stayed an extra night and waited before, because it wasn't big enough that I wasn't going to mount it, but I wanted it Euroed. So I left it and, I'm 10 hours from home. So I wasn't going back for it. And so, you just had to factor that in. But, that's exactly right. And it's hard. And the same thing can be said for, like for the agriculture sector. People are so disconnected nowadays. Where does your food come from? What goes on? And I do have that opportunity to talk with a lot of clients or people. A lot of them are, or even they're just regular folks buying a house. Because it's going to come up. Hey, I'm going to be gone next week. I'm going hunting. Sorry. So that sort of stuff does come up, and that's where you just have to, and so it's like I generously, probably too much, give away a lot of the meat that we have.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things I've always explained to people. It's like, well, I had deer once and it was bad. So, well, if it was not good, then to me, it was just not taken care of properly. It was not processed well. Maybe you got it, took it somewhere and you got a mixed batch of something, or somebody, and that's why we do all of our own. And that's the stuff that we give away. And I always emphasize that, look, hey, generally, our family will put away 6 to 8 does. A lot of times they'll donate the bucks. And that's just usually because November's busy. Maybe my daughter shoots one, dad shoots one. I'm not trying to process deer right then. I'm trying to keep hunting. I'm going somewhere else, hopefully. And so, around Christmas time, first year, things are a little slower. So usually over those mid-December timeframe, we'll stack up 4 or 5 and then process them at the same time. But I think we put up 128, 130 pounds of ground deer this year. And, that's stuff we do ourselves. And that's what, goes for mom and dad, my family, my sister. We all do it together. We just set aside a night. We do that. And then, and I like to give, that away to whoever will appreciate it. But I always explain to them, look, hey, if I cook this, you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I promise you couldn't know. But it's because of, in my opinion, the way we take care of things and the extra effort that comes into it. So, education is key and whatever it is. And so, people that just don't know or not around it, it's hard to say, when the zombie deer gets posted and ran through on Facebook, it's hard to explain that. So, every chance you can, you got to explain to people that, hey, these are different. We want to treat them differently, and we're just going to do what we can. But so far, nothing has been transmissible to humans, and that's the best thing. So to this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I genuinely didn't know the difference in CWD and EHD, why I brought that up. But should we, from a private landowner's perspective, should we still be, encouraging people to kill as many does and get that buck to doe ratio down with EHD being so bad here lately?
I still think so. I mean, unless you're specific, and that's the thing about EHD that's wild is, it can hit 2 miles here and then over there be perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. You just don't know. And so, that's where each landowner or person that's hunting that farm is going to have to make that decision of, what am I seeing on my cameras? What's coming into the feeders? How, decimated are my food plots? Have you got an exclusion cage? And then you got to make that decision of, okay, I need to take X amount of deer off this property to make things right. And then, the great thing, here in a lot of states have it is you can donate those deer.
Yep.
You just take them out, gut them, go drop them off.
Yep. Yeah. I know, like you're talking about how it's, very, each farm is a little bit different. I think I saw something on Facebook, a guy up in northern Kentucky or northeastern Kentucky or somewhere up there that was talking. He had found something like 48 deer on his farm, 48 deer on one farm, and that's a severe case right there. Whereas around here, you may go several farms in a row and not see a dead one. So it's crazy how it's just so secluded to each particular area. Each farm is completely different. And so management practices have to be completely different.
Yeah. And that's just the manager of the resource. That's your responsibility. So, if you're the one hunting, it's just like, if these are your cows or these are my cows, it's my corn, that's your corn.
Yeah.
So, every farmer, every, person that's responsible for that, if that's a priority to you, you've got to determine that. And if not, you got to seek some help to find the knowledge that you need to figure out what you want it to be.
Yeah.
And what it needs to be.
Yeah. I mean, as far as LBL goes, let's say, 5-10 years in advance from now, with EHD and CWD, and now the hogs are coming into play. What do we need to do as hunters to be able to preserve the genetics and the really good public land deer hunting around here?
Well, we do have with, LBL and Clarks River, Big Rivers, TVA ground, whatever you say, we do have a fair amount of public land compared to a lot of places. And they're all managed differently. They're all treated differently. And that's another thing is, LBL's federal. Clarksville, well, they're federal, but it's a different entity. It's USDA versus National Wildlife Refuge System. Then you got, some state properties as well. And so that's the hard part. They each have their own goals and they each do their own thing. And so, speaking to the hogs, a good friend of mine is one of the trappers down there, and they stay on them. They do. And the thing about hogs that people don't realize is they've never been eradicated. I don't think anywhere they've tried. And LBL is an interesting place because of the lake situation. It's possible, I guess, but it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of money. And how much is that as a priority? And obviously we want to keep that at bay best we can because they are destructive. And so, but, the argument is, and it's been proven, I get it. A lot of the folks want to hunt them.
Yeah.
But it's been proven anywhere and everywhere that as soon as you give a value to that animal, people want to hunt them. And then, if the intentions were pure to eradicate them, and they would be happy, but what happens when we actually achieve that goal? And so, the fear is that people will find a value and then they will go release them in that area. And that's been done by folks who, enjoy hunting the hogs and in different states down in the South. And some of it was maybe not ill intent, but some of it was, we don't care. This is what we like to do. So that's been the big dilemma. And then the fact of, everybody acts like they would be easy to hunt. Like, hey, they're not. They're not. They're out there. I've seen where they're at, know where they're at. I've talked to a lot of, the trappers about it. And, it's like, hey, if I gave you 3 days, I don't know if you could. Now, when it's in the wintertime and they're hungry and they're on the side of the road, that's a little different.
They're smart. They're a real smart animal. They don't always appear that way.
No. And I think that is a misconception a lot of times of, you might go in there and shoot one or something, but the effectiveness comes in the trapping where you're able to, keep those sounders together.
Yeah.
And then take out as many as you can in one lump sum versus, picking them off one at a time as a hunter and then scattering them to who knows where.
That's what the biologist friend of mine, he was saying that's the biggest thing. Like if you're out in LBL and you see one hog come by and you're deer hunting and a hog comes by and it's just all by itself. Yeah. I mean, maybe you are better off just go ahead and take that one by itself. But if generally they're going to be in a pack. So, I mean, if there's 10 of them there, you shoot one of those. Well, now you just created 9 more groups of them. You just split them up because they're that smart and they know when something's not right. And so trying to trap them, like you said, is probably the most effective way if I had to guess.
Yeah. And that's just hard because it's a big area and it's inconsistent and, you have one full-time person responsible for that with the one guy who has other responsibilities helping, and you're trying to maintain figure out what the population is. They don't have the funds or the ability to go in there and do a thermal count, or get drones. I mean, they get some funds for the helicopters and that's productive. It has been, they've done a good job with that. But there's just not enough. And that's the same thing, with anything these days is, unfortunately, wildlife doesn't get the priority or the conservation doesn't get the priority that we as, outdoorsmen would like to see. And that's across the board. And, that just goes from the maintenance of the roads, and even when the funds come in, a lot of times they don't even go directly back to the public land resource. It has to go somewhere else, and then they get allocated funds. And so it's become extremely complicated and extremely political. And that's one reason that I personally didn't go that route. I know what I was able to see, kind of what my dad did in the 90s. And, he was out on the landscape, being able to accomplish a lot of things and physically doing the things that he signed up to do. Whereas, and granted, he climbed the ladder and his position changed to management to where he was confined to that desk, answering emails, going through this, that, and the other. And then the million, safety trainings and this, that, and the other to be able to just get out there and use a lawnmower. And so basic things. And so, and that, I think that goes for, a lot of government agencies and a lot of, cities and municipalities and all that sort of stuff. So it's gotten so complicated, bureaucratic that efficiency is not really the model. And I think that's said about a lot of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They had shortened turkey season in LBL this year. Was it the hogs hurting turkey numbers on that? No, turkey's a separate thing. And I'll get my personal opinion is that there's really
the turkey population has decreased as a result of death by 1,000 cuts or whatever you want to say. We've lost habitat, nesting habitat. The population of, nest raiding predators has increased significantly. Nobody talks about the diseases, the amount of diseases that, be it from domestic livestock or fowl or maybe it's through chicken litter or any of those things. There's lots and lots going against the turkeys. And so, we've had some good hatches. We've had, in the last 3 to 5 years better than what we had. And I think there is a slight uptick overall, but same thing. It's like, this wasn't a problem and all of a sudden it is a problem and we need to know why. Mm-hmm. But I think that it's hard to point the finger at one individual thing. I think that it's a combination of, and then figuring out, is it bad enough that we do need to go to one bird?
Yeah, that's true.
And so that's one of those things where we just have to figure out what makes the most sense for each of these states and how do we want to handle that population. And turkey is harder in that sense because I think it's not one specific issue or one specific problem we're addressing.
Mm-hmm. How are the turkey numbers on Clark's River?
So Clark's River, a lot of that is bottom ground, which is prime mm-hmm. turkeys. And so, and Clark's River is busted up in the sense of, there's a lot of private land intermingled with it. Mm-hmm. So, you get a lot of deer and turkeys that cross. It's not one big isolated chunk, like LBL. So that being the case, I think that, with that being a more wetland type of refuge, gives turkeys, which is prime turkey habitat, the numbers are fine there. It's just more of the pressure, mm-hmm. amount of people, versus the way that LBL treats it, with their length or shortened season rather, and their quota hunts. And so that will help. But, to me, is it 100% proven that it's necessary? And are we, do we have the information to justify shortening the season? Are we making that knee-jerk reaction? Or is that, just something that we visually see? Mm-hmm. So finding that balance and getting the information is hard.
Yeah. Do turkeys get the influenza, or is that just waterfowl?
Yeah, I think they can get it.
Yeah, they get it. There's a lot of diseases out there for turkeys that you would probably never even heard of. I think there's the pox, and then there's the flu, and
I don't think turkeys are very hardy. Just in the grand scheme of things, they're susceptible to a lot of different things.
Oh, yeah. And then but some of that nesting. Yeah. Where they have the super layers, and then some who don't even try. The hens, that is. Some, that raise majority of them, and then others don't even try to nest. It's kind of a fascinating thing. And we're starting to see a little of that information come out from these studies with trackers and everything. And so it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, it's all seemingly, we're talking about a lot of different things, but seemingly it's we had the folks who the generation before us or 2 generations before us where they say, I remember it was a big deal to see a deer or turkey.
Yeah.
Well, then, we grew up in the prime of, hey, they're back and it's wild. Yeah. And then now we've kind of these issues. And, so we've got to figure out, get that information to try to do with it, to just keep a reasonable population. And, we may have very well seen the heyday and the golden age of whitetail and turkey be gone.
I see a lot of crossover. Obviously, I fish quite a bit as well. And I see a lot of crossover fishing and hunting. We, as a whole, with bass fishing and with deer hunting, turkey hunting, I think we look at things a whole lot differently now because we understand a whole lot more. It's a lot more popular to manage. We're managing whitetail, we're managing turkeys, we're managing bass fishing. If someone posts a stringer of bass on Facebook, they get roasted. Yeah. And it's one of those things that I think as we know more, You look at just the changes, used to be just a red flannel and go out there with a rifle and sit up against a tree. And, now it's so much more serious. So I think we're going to notice these changes because we're a lot more invested in it than we have over the course of several years ago. Mm-hmm. And same thing with bass fishing.
Yeah. We were talking about that with Bill Winke and on social media, how, used to, if you killed a 180-inch deer, it was a huge deal. And it seems like every time you get on social media, somebody's killing a 200 here every day. And it just makes, and social media has kind of ruined that trophy hunting aspect, I guess you could say. But yeah, I wish we could go back before social media and where, it was the trophies in the eye of the beholder or what they used to say and stuff. But,
and that does create a lot of envy and it makes people do a lot of things that they shouldn't do, and that social media is good what it's good for. I mean, it has been a blessing to me in a lot of ways. I talk to more guys from who knows where. My wife gets so mad at me. Who's coming to our house?
Yeah.
Where are you going to hang out with somebody you've never met, but you're going to go spend a week with them in some state?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, I appreciate it for that, but yeah, it's one of those things where you certainly have to be careful of. And, the big thing now, it scares me for like the next generation, our kids.
Yeah.
My 10-year-old daughter, she's, ready for a phone. It's like, sorry, that's not happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see people with social media, saying they're bow hunting and holding out for, 160 inch deer, but they never even killed a 130 inch deer with the bow, which could be good and bad for management and kill an older age class deer. But I think the perception out there is, if you don't kill a giant, then you're just not successful or a good hunter.
Yeah. And I hate that. I mean, it's one, you can't hunt with, if it's not there, you can't kill it,
Right.
And so the other thing is it's meant to be a progression, whether you start in small game, you start on the little duck pond, you work your way up to those trips to what you're, and so, go out there and you got to figure out what makes you happy. It is somewhat aggravating to me, to somebody that, can, maybe they have enough experience that they, and they say the things that they, the right things, but then they continually do, maybe shoot something a little smaller. It's like, but in the, like I said, in the end, everybody can do what they want to do. But yes, it should be a progression. You should work your way up. Like just try to beat last year just by a little bit. And that's where I'm at, with my daughter. She's killed a couple bucks now. I think, she started with a little 5-point. And then last year she shot a pretty decent little 9-point. And so it's like, hey, you can shoot whatever you want to, but, for her to understand that, to get something of that caliber again, it's going to take, you got pretty lucky.
Yeah.
We did 4 sets and she shot it Sunday afternoon of the 2-day youth season. And so, you should build up, you should, take that, and everybody's journey is different. Mm-hmm. And so, but hey, the other thing is, not everybody's as serious as I am.
Yeah.
Right.
And so they may be completely content with that 3-year-old every single year. And so you have to respect that, but that is what makes it hard, is that everybody's goals are different. And, I'm over here trying to accomplish this and they're trying to accomplish this, and we're neighbors and that doesn't match. And so, you just got to figure out where that balance is.
That's the thing. I like to manage deer to try and shoot mature deer because that's my goal. But I hate, like talking about social media, I hate seeing these posts where someone will shoot a smaller deer or younger deer and people are shaming them for that. I mean, I saw something one time that was about Fred Bear. It was like, well, Fred Bear wasn't too good to shoot a little deer, And so whatever floats your boat. I mean, and we're all able to do whatever we want to do. I want to manage deer. If you want to shoot smaller deer or younger deer, that's fine. But realize that you're not going to get that mature deer, that bigger deer, if you don't let it go.
Yeah. And that's just things like you got those keyboard warriors and, so this, that, and the other. So as long as somebody's happy and they're following the rules, that's all you can do in the end. Yeah. So if you shoot a 2-year-old, you shoot a 3-year-old, it doesn't matter. Yeah. As long as you're following the rules and you're doing what you're supposed to do, you're treating it with respect. I don't care.
That's what I want to see the industry be, is everybody get along with everybody and just enjoy the harvest, whatever that harvest is, just be able to enjoy that.
If only.
Yeah. It'd be nice.
Yeah. We talked about gun season, but what's your thoughts on crossbow? Do you think there should be a separate crossbow season?
I do like the way that they've done it, where you cannot, start using crossbow till after the first 2 weeks in September, and then same thing in January. The hard part is they are so effective. And I've got some friends that are able-bodied 30-year-old men that should not be using them. And I give them a lot of grief.
Yeah.
But it's just, but that's the way it goes. And so it does provide more opportunity. And that's the thing. That balance of, okay, we are now so much more technologically advanced and so much more efficient versus the old school days of what the primitive weapons were. And so finding that balance is, but the other thing is, if hunter numbers are truly declining, which I don't know. I see so many people hunting these days.
I don't see how that's true.
I don't know how, but that was always the thing for a long time. So finding the balance of how much public land do we have? Is it enough to support this? And then, those, but still giving the opportunity for folks. And so it wouldn't bother me if it was its own season, maybe for the 9th of November or just a little bit longer. It doesn't have to be as long as it is now. Of course, in every state treats that differently. Iowa, you're going to have a disabled permit or a doctor's, note or whatever you want to call it to be able to use one outside of I'm whatever. I'm assuming gun season or whatever the way that works. I don't know, but yeah, it's hard. I'm not going to go against it because it does provide like my kids. Like I'm still hoping to have an opportunity to take my daughter, maybe the end of October one afternoon or just when I can, and she'll be able to use the crossbow, or my wife, if I can get her to go again, so it does provide opportunity that I like. And so I'm not hard against it, but it definitely needs to be, in my opinion, regulated at least a little bit.
Yeah. Do you ever get a chance to go out west and hunt mule deer or elk or anything?
So I've been to Colorado once. That was a glorified hiking trip. We did an over-the-counter elk hunt. That's what that was. But I've done Wyoming mule deer once. That was I didn't draw Colorado. So when I found that out, I had 3 or 4 days to make a decision because Wyoming was still open. So I just threw a pin or dart at the map, drew a region mule deer tag, and I think I drove 19 hours by myself and stayed for 9 days and camped and slept. And I missed a really good one on the first morning. And I didn't know what I was. I mean, didn't know. I had a region, so I had some space. Mm-hmm. But I ended up finding some. I saw some really good ones, and then I ended up wounding one. A couple days later, that was significantly smaller. He'd probably been 140, but I was tickled for the experience. But gut shot mule deer in the middle of dark timber does not add up very well. I tried. I backed out and then grid searched the next day best I could. And of course, I had really nothing to go off of. So I've done a few things. I did we tried a antelope hunt out in western Nebraska one year. Went to New Zealand and shot a stag last year. And so I did Alaska caribou in 21. That was fun, interesting. I've never been so wet in my life. There's nothing to burn. There's no way to get dry. The one thing I remember about that is I was mowing my yard here. It was August. I think we left the 15th of August. And they should have been right out of velvet by the time we got up there. But I was mowing my yard, didn't have a shirt on. I'm dripping in sweat. It's 101. Our folks who drop service, she called and she's like, "Hey, you need to pack for snow." It's 101 out.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to? I can't in my mind pack for snow right now.
Yeah.
But being able to get up there and go the length of the haul road, and so that's when now it's like, I'm still whitetails are number one, but the way I try to approach it is, I'm still driving the truck out there that I drove today from high school.
Yeah.
I do have a nicer truck, but I put my miles on that one. Mm-hmm. And so everybody always says it's, it's like, hey, y'all make truck payments. I make hunt payments. Yeah. So I stash it away. And then every second or third year, I'll save up enough to where I can determine, and like the Western trips, if you do your research, you buy your points and you're willing to go out there, you can do those hunts for reasonably cheap not over the counter, but public land, do those things. And then, there's some hunts, whether it's Africa or New Zealand or Spain or, some of those like that, you're just going to have to save up and set it aside. And so I try to do those every third year. And in between, I'll do a Kansas and Iowa and maybe I'll sneak in a Wyoming, public land hunt, something like that. So I'm definitely trying to just mix it up, do what I can. And then, the turkeys, I don't get too far on turkeys. I think last year I did Indiana, Ohio, and Illinois. And just
that was going to be my question, if you'd done the slam or anything.
No, I have to prioritize. And with real estate, March, April, May is the gauntlet. Mm-hmm. And so when I did like Ohio and Indiana, that was a 3-day trip. Went some private with some friends that invited me up. And so Illinois, of course, I can make that day drive. So I just have to, that's one of those things where deer are more important. So that's where I sacrifice. One day I'll make the big tour and cover some ground. But, right now I just put it into whitetails, and I like to make, and the way I've done it or try to do it, especially now as the kids have gotten older and I really have to set aside, outside the kids, I haven't even been this year. I don't, it's been extremely busy. Mm-hmm. And so the way I try to approach it is, one in September, if I can get it, maybe that's a Western hunt, a week in November, which will be some Midwestern rut state. And then the time that I go that a lot of people don't is when it's really cold. And I like to go, late season somewhere, either Missouri or Iowa usually. And then I'll do that late season muzzleloader hunt when it's real cold and there's a lot less happening. Once Christmas is over, maybe around the first of the year, that first 2 weeks of January where people are still kind of getting back in and it's not as busy. That's a real good window. So I've kind of And those are far enough apart that it doesn't make my wife too mad. I can space them out.
Yeah.
I can space them out.
About the time she forgives you for the last one.
Yeah,
Time to go on the next
so,
one.
So I'm approaching it that way.
Yeah.
That's been the model, and I think it's been working pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That caribou hunt would be a dream of mine. Was it just sitting up top glassing all day?
No, it was. I could see further than I could walk. You know, we were on the tundra. It was as flat as could be.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't flat. There was a little bit of rise, but still, you know, you'd walk a mile to just look over there, and it's like, hey, there's some over there. Well, that's 3 more miles.
Yeah.
And then, they flew us in on a float plane, dropped us off, and then we were there for 6 days until we finally shot them, and they come got us. And so, not something I'd probably do again. That was my 30th birthday trip that I wanted to do and decided on that year, or a couple of years prior. So that was that experience. But you know, it's one of those things. Like, it was fun. It was wet. I kept thinking, you know, we'd get dry, we'd build the fires. There's nothing to burn. It's tundra.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know, and then you get wet. It was so wet. And so we missed a good portion of the migration. We didn't really, and that's the thing. It's so hit and miss.
Mm-hmm.
Some, you know, if you can get dropped right in the middle of them, we got dropped behind it. Come to find out, you know, we learned later that, hey, they had already left. We were too far north. We were behind them. But, you know, it's one of those things. It's, you know, experience. And we both shot bulls, but they were small.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. The elk hunting quota thing, I guess you could say the preference points kind of confuse me. Cause I mean, to get a really good track and area with like trophy class bulls, I mean, you would have to put in for what, 20 years? Yeah.
And that just depends on the state and how much money you want to spend.
Yeah.
And so I personally, at this point in life, have decided that I'll just pay. I'll save up.
Mm-hmm.
And now I might do, it's like Wyoming is the state where I've built up the most. So one day when I cash those in, I may have 12, 15, 20. That'll probably be the once in a lifetime kind of deal. And I may do some other hunts with lower expectations, but to have the true, you know, what you see on TV experience, you know, you got to be on private. There's just no way around it. You've got to find those ranches. You know, unless you live out there, you know, it's like we can do what we do with whitetails. You know, if I've mentioned all these states where we can drive and spend a weekend and do this and do that and scout and have, you know, quality opportunities. Just like I leave cameras soaking in 2 or 3 different states on public to just know what's going to be there for next year.
Yeah.
You know, and with really no intention of hunting. Whereas out west, if you live out there, they can do the same thing.
Yeah.
So for a Midwesterner, if you don't have the funds or the connections, you know, that's my opinion. So one day I'll do it. You know, I think mule deer, my big fear getting out there later in the year, October, November, is just being in those mountains when the snow comes down or getting caught up there and just not having that experience. You know, it's not something we get to do or know how to handle very often. And you're driving up down these roads. So that's why for me, I'm pretty comfortable being out there in September.
Yeah. How many preference points is it a year you get? Is it 2?
It's one per state. You know, and every state is different. You know, it's so complicated. Whereas Wyoming is a true straight preference point state. Whereas you get into Montana, you can buy your base preference points. You can only have up to 2 or 3 before they take them away if you don't apply. If you apply, but you know, once you have 2, you should draw. I think, or 3, you should draw. That's for their big game combo. But then they have bonus points. And then bonus points go into the pool where they're squared, and then that can add you into some special areas. And so you get into other states like Idaho and New Mexico, that's completely random. There are no preference points. Yeah. And so it's very, very complicated, very different. And, you know, like if you want to watch Randy Newberg, he explains it on his YouTube videos, you know, just saying this state this year, he has a breakdown of, okay, this is what you need to do. This is so some states I've built points in. And, you know, if you look at, if I buy elk, mule deer, and antelope, and I do that for Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, well, you know, I get 1 trip per year, so I might burn them, cash them in on mule deer 1 year. Mm-hmm. Well, I may not be back to that state for 10. And by then, if I've built up that many more elk points, so it's hard for a Midwestern guy to get out there and actually use all those points. But if you don't have them the way point creep is in today, and so it's money that's probably thrown out the window in a lot of cases, but you got to have them or you'll never even have the opportunity. Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever put in for the non-resident Kansas turkey tag? No, I have not. I know that eastern side, they reduced their tag. They had some flooding a few years back. It was pretty bad and wrecked a lot of the nesting. So I haven't made it any further west than Missouri as far as turkeys go. Okay. I've kind of stayed on this side where the true east. As a matter of fact, I've only killed easterns. But, you know, I think I did shoot 5 this year. So had a good year.
Yeah. I put in for it and didn't get drawn this year. So I'll be shocked if I don't get drawn again next year for turkeys, which is weird. I would have figured I got drawn for turkeys, but not for deer my first time. But it was the other way around.
Yeah, and I think like on the eastern half, it's like 50% draw without a point, and then 50%. Anyways, but they have a breakdown where you can get on there and see the odds, and then of course, Go Hunt is a good. There's some other ones, but the Go Hunt's the one I use for odds as far as percentages and knowing. But both the years, both skip a year. I mean, I drew in 21 for Kansas with deer. But anyways, I had a point each time. Every year I put in without a point. I'm not the lucky one.
Yeah.
Didn't you kill an Oklahoma deer a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I did.
So.
A buddy of mine who tried to outfit, he picked up some lease and was going to see if he could sell some hunts and that sort of thing. And so I had helped him out, and we worked a deal. So I went out there, and that one, I don't know, that deer's probably 30s. He was maybe 4. It doesn't really matter because that hunt there, that was a spot and stalk on the ground, Northwest Oklahoma. They had, some corn piles and some blinds. We'd been seeing some deer, but I told him, I was like, man, if there's an opportunity, I really want to spot and stalk one. And so that deer was earlier in November, but I just sat up on the ground in a cedar bush. I was on this side of the creek. The deer walks on the far side of the creek, and this is in scrub brush country. And actually I was behind him, but I was being aggressive. I was just seeing what I could do. Like I had nothing to lose. And so I got up behind him and I crawled, and I was probably 50 yards from him behind him. And he's just moseying along, and he heard me, and he actually he was trying to figure out what I was. He actually turned back to me and came closer with that head up, just trying to look, like trying to figure out what exactly that was. I'm laying there on the ground with the arrow knocked like this. And when he did that, he turned, he turned and he got broadside, and then I just came up and shot him. And that one was pretty awesome. I end up letting him bed. We went ate breakfast, came back, and actually found him still alive. And then snuck. He was hurt real bad, but I snuck in there and was able to get another one in on him. And that was that. If you can spot and stalk it, I mean, that's
get the adrenaline going.
That way, and like I said, I mean, there's nothing more I love than watching a good old whitetail adrenaline DVD. I don't know if y'all are fans, but that's top of the line right there.
Yeah,
I keep waiting on the next one.
How are you? Were you stalking on a decoy or
nope.
Just straight up?
Straight up being not smart about it and got lucky, because there's no reason I should have been able to get that close to a deer that I was behind, but just fortunate. And he was being, curious as to what was going on. And, I just happened to play it right. And for that reason, it's one of the most fun hunts I have ever had, but regardless of how big it was. I mean, and it was a great deer. I mean, I was super, excited to have that one. So that was a really fun hunt for sure.
Yeah. Well, we're creeping in on about an hour here. Tell us where they can find you on social media, website, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Well, Reese Johnson 7 on pretty much about any platform. I used to be a lot more involved in that than I am now. I've kind of gone through the burnout phase, but I still like to talk to people. Anybody have any questions or anything, or whether it be real estate or just deer, I love talking. So anything I can help with, you're welcome to send me a message.
Trail Camera Tuesday.
Yeah.
Is it coming back?
Claim to fame. No, it's over. It's over.
Over.
I'm too
done
old.
with it.
Too old. I mean, every once in a while, but
yeah.
Back before the algorithms and you could do things.
Yeah.
So I'll let it be. I'll let the next generation have it. But it was fun while it lasted, and like I said, got to meet a lot of folks and do a lot of cool things because of it. So
sure,
don't regret it.
Good deal. You got anything else, Ryan?
That's it. That wraps it up.
Good deal. Well, we appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.